Okay, so here we are again for another Ask Mom and Dad.
Sounds like a burden. It's not a burden.
It's not a burden. It's never a burden to talk to you, darling. It's
okay.
You laugh as if I'm jesting, but I'm not jesting. It's sometimes it can be work to talk to one another because that's the nature of relationships.
Yeah.
They require work because God doesn't.
I don't know. We should just give up, shouldn't we? That's what it's supposed to do these days.
Quit. Well, you can quit on anything these days. You don't have to quit on relationships. You can quit on relationships. You can quit on your sexuality. You can quit on your racial identity. You can quit on your sanity. Wait, I digress. I think
that's on
that last one
side.
covers everything else. Yeah, I find it interesting. I'm trying to remember what. Well, first off, welcome to our podcast. All who listen there, be thee one, be thee many, be thee none at all. This is. I was thinking about this earlier, Tonya. I think this is the best way to put it. We're going to sit here with our Bibles open and our minds ready to talk about the things that are cast upon them throughout the time between podcasts, because I would like to say throughout the week, but we don't even know how things are going to fold or unfold. And so anyway,
Well, we have questions. Our kids genuinely ask us questions about culture, about life, about the Bible. So this podcast stems from questions that we've been asked, and maybe ones that we know are out there, maybe even ones we have. So I don't think it's bad for us to say, Ask Mom and Dad is just us responding to, hey, let's talk about that because we like to talk.
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting at is I think, excuse me, I think that, we, sometimes it feels like we're saying the same things over and over again. I don't know. I've been pastoring forever, it feels like, and it's not forever. I've met people who've been pastoring forever and ever, and that's much longer than just forever. A lot of times it feels like the messaging is the same, but also the older I get, the more I realize that we need to say the messages over and over again, because as much as we talk, we forget as quickly or
Nobody
quicker.
hears them or remembers them if you don't say it over and over. But I don't feel like we repeated ourselves that much.
Yeah. So random nugget of pop culture that just random popped in. So if anyone's watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, it doesn't really matter. Everyone knows that Flash, not everyone, anyone who follows any comics or has ever watched any CW TV show, Flash can outrun time. And when he does, time goes backwards. And the thing that popped in my head is sometimes it feels like we're having to continue to say things because Flash runs over us and erases everything that we remembered. It's not working as a metaphor, but I just needed to go for it and give it a shot. Let's start with this. We're going to talk a little bit today about an article that you read, and I'll let you get into that first in just a second. But I wanted to start with a good story because I was really encouraged. I just ran across a story that popped into my feed this morning. That was a 70-year-old Marine vet with lung problems runs into burning house, saves neighbor's life. And we're going to talk a little bit about the question of how do I find meaning, or what is meaning in life. And that was to me like, wow, that's pretty much a good thing. This 70-year-old veteran guy has bad lung health. And of course, the people writing the article are going to point out, this guy's got issues. He shouldn't be running into a burning house at all. But he said he went out in the morning and he was on his way back home. And as he was coming back, his name is James Johnson of Norristown, Pennsylvania. And he was on his way back home, and he noticed the house was on fire up the road. And as he got closer, he said he saw the flames were from a distance, didn't look so bad, but the closer he got, the worse they got. And so he ran up and started banging on the door and yelling to see if anyone was in there, and he just knew someone needed to be. And with the help of some young fellas that came along, he managed to kick the door in and run inside and call for help. And
run inside and call?
Well, go inside and start yelling out, is anyone in here?
Right,
See if anyone's here. And he said he found a man upstairs. So here's a guy running into a burning house, got bad lungs to begin with. I want to repeat something. He's 70 years old. Not that you can't be spry at 70.
Did he have a mask on because he might have gotten COVID?
In the picture, he does have a mask on. He's down around his chin. So he might have pulled the mask over his face, which I do think that might help in that situation.
Helped him in that area.
Whether it helps in other things is still is an open debate.
Apparently he wasn't
it's a closed debate that should be open, whether it helps in other areas.
What I was thinking was if he has bad lungs, apparently he's not worried about COVID, though, if he's going to help someone else. So that's good.
Well, yeah, he was. His biggest concern was getting up there, and he got upstairs and he found a man on the floor trapped. And he said he was on fire. We got to get him out quick. And so him and I think he had these two young men helping him, drug him down the stairs, brought him outside, and started putting him out. He was on fire. The guy was on fire. His hair was on fire. And so he started putting him out. And I think the cool thing is the Norristown Fire Department came in, took care of the blaze. And then the judge, the magistrate judge, Gregory Scott, also a Norristown firefighter, showed up at his home with a certificate to honor his bravery. I appreciate you so much, Scott told the veteran. The city plans to formally recognize Johnson at the next municipal county meeting. And it just,
who was the guy that was rescued?
It doesn't tell you anything about the guy that was rescued. There's a picture of the house on fire and a picture of the man who did the deed. He ran in. It says he's got his hat on. It says U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Looks like he's Vietnam area. Obviously, he's just about the same age as your dad, or a little younger than your father. But I think it's just, we talk about meaning and what's important in life. And you ran across an article this week by Dennis Prager, an opinion piece. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that article, and let's just talk about it and see what surfaces.
Well, there was just quite a bit of, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but it got my attention because it was the human need to feel important and how government squelches it. That was the title or headline that drew my attention. It just was a pretty good commentary on how far we've gotten away from allowing people to have meaning and to feel a sense of importance, even to their own families. First, we stole it from men because women had to compete and had to be better and had to, now there was even the whole era of Mr. Mom, why can't the guy stay home and take care of the kids and whatever. And then what he was pointing out was it's actually even less important. It's women never did still get what they want. They're still out there kind of complaining that work didn't actually provide the sense of importance that people expected it to. Even the women that was trying to make, because the rise of feminism, women haven't only become breadwinners, they became increasingly the primary breadwinner, but it deprived men of the sense of importance, but it also didn't satisfy women, which we know that's true because most women, it says that when wives and children believe that the old kind of picture of father knows best or whatever, people made fun of that. They made fun of, there was an era there that they were making fun of the men have to be in charge, or they have to be, the breadwinners, and they're going to take care of their family and protect their family. But when wives and children believed that was true, then it really was true for the man. But when that got kind of taken away, then men kind of got lost in what was going to bring them. Anyway, he says, however, contrary to the expectations of the well-educated women becoming breadwinners, it hasn't provided most women with a sense of importance and certainly not meaning in life. Contrary to what feminism, colleges, high schools, progressive parents, and mass media have claimed for decades, men and women don't have the same natures. So even though the thing I liked was that he talked about midlife crisis, and he said it's usually a crisis for men, a crisis of importance. I thought I'd be much more important at this stage of life than I am, most men kind of think or say. But it mostly affects men in that way, but feelings of less important after one's children have left home affects more mothers than fathers. So there's the absolute still sort of slants the way God has made us.
So are you
That's
saying,
what I was trying to get to.
Did you get the impression that there's you keep using the word meaning and importance interchangeably. Are they interchangeable, or are they tied together, or how are they different and how are they the same?
Yeah. He used the word importance. I like the word meaning. Importance makes it feel, to me, a little more of a lift yourself up kind of haughtiness. Whereas meaning comes through more of a humble approach of just like this man running into the burning building. He was, to me, for him to walk away from that, the meaning that he would have gotten from that was that a man's life was saved, or that he did what was right at the right moment, not cowing and cowing to fear, whatever. It was not after he felt it, to me, the importance factor. Now the whole city knows, and so gives him an award. That's not what he was going for. To me, from that article you were referring to, meaning was the what took him into that building, not importance. Do you see what I'm differentiating?
Well, yeah, well,
that's where. So I think there's two different angles on it. I think this article is trying to say the same thing, but using those interchangeably. I don't know that I would. Is all I was trying to say about that. But what about you? What are your thoughts?
I think Rona's making a guest appearance in the background.
Okay.
Well, I'm differentiating meaning and importance, but I think you defined it fairly well, which is, meaning is kind of, to me, I guess meaning is rooted in, and this is where you went with it too, rooted in who you are in God. What is your purpose in life?
Identity, yeah.
Your identity is more identity related, whereas importance is, weight of identity. Is that
Okay, that's one way to put it.
Do you know what I'm saying? In other words,
Kind of, yeah.
Was it important that that man saved the life of the other man? Well, sure, it was important. You mentioned that it wasn't important that he felt. You wouldn't think that he would be concerned about it being recognized
no, I said
for it.
It wasn't the motivation.
That wasn't his motivation.
Meaning, to give it to me, meaning was more of a motivation. Meaning that it's the thing to do. If you have the courage to go ahead and do it, go in, and then this man's life is saved. That gives people meaning to help someone else out, to give away our lives.
So importance.
That scripture we referenced last time, lose your life so you can save it, rather than save your life so you can lose it. Most of the time people find meaning when they've given their lives away, not held on to it. But the importance part of it, I was just kind of using that as an illustration. The importance part of it might be some accolades he gets from other people, but that's not really what's going to motivate someone to feel important from other people. However, this one paragraph, can I read this one paragraph? Sure. Kind of uses both of those words, and I don't know what I think he's using them a little more interchangeably.
That's what I'm asking, if they're interchangeable.
Because he says the need for meaning would be second only to the need for food. He says if one were to draw up a list of human needs, but that meaning is more important to happiness than even sex, is easily shown. Because, Freud would put out there that the sex is one of the highest needs in human experience, whatever, like number 2. But he says that meaning is more important to happiness than even sex, and it's easily shown. Great many people go long periods without sex, while many of them miss it. If they have meaning in their lives, they can lead quiet, happy, and fulfilling lives. On the other hand, few people who have regular sex but lack meaning are happy or fulfilled.
Right.
So third on the list of human needs is the need to feel important. So I think he's kind of using both of those. The need to feel to have meaning gives life fullness.
Right.
To feel important, maybe by your family, by someone who leans on you, someone who relies on you, whatever. That's a section of it. That's an angle on it. But it's not, to me, it's not the height of it.
And obviously Prager's simplifying this construct in order to get to a major point. I was thinking about, when I read the article earlier, about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which starts with your basic needs, and then your physiological needs, and then your self-fulfillment needs. Mm-hmm. And those are the big 3. But in the basic needs is food, water, warmth, and rest is your baseline, and then security and safety. And so Prager says the top 2 were, what did he say the top 2 was? He listed them. I forgot.
Well, food and shelter.
Food and shelter. So that's your safety needs. Shelter is safety. Food is sustenance. So he's simplifying Maslow at that point. And the next one listed is belongingness and love needs, intimate relationships and friends. Mm-hmm. And so, that's that importance, I think. That's Prager's spin on emotional needs. Those are the top 3. And then after that, there's esteem. So that's why I asked the question, is importance building on top of belonging, or of having an importance or being? Because that is, in Maslow's construct, that's the weight is the next level up. So it's not that I existed, not that I was a mother, not that I was a man who had a job, but that I was a mother who made a significant impact in the lives of my children that has lasted to the next generation, that I've transferred for a
I see
mother,
what
I
you're
guess for
saying.
mother and father or for family, would be to transfer your character, transfer the beliefs and the heritage, I guess, as the legacy to the next generation. If you've done that successfully, then there's weight to it.
So
There's
that's
something,
the
there's a
angle, that's
fulfillment
the
need.
importance angle. Is that what you're
Yeah, because
saying?
anyone can be a mom and dad because all that takes is that
And
sex
that
thing that he
gives,
mentioned. But
well,
but
but no, no, wait. That's not necessarily true because to me, to take on the responsibility of being a mom or a dad, that's not necessarily just a given if you have a child. Yes, you can, like you just said, have sex, have a child. That does not make you a mom or a dad in the sense of meaning.
and that's what I'm getting at. I'm saying that you can you may be biologically identified as the parent of, but the weight of that comes from how you deal with that. And the question that I'm
Oh,
wondering about is Prager trying to answer is
I'm still separating that out a little bit. I'm thinking you could, from what I thought you said, you could find meaning in being a mom or a dad. I am a mom to these kids, and that's kind of almost, it's almost like it's an identity, but it's sort of a selfish slant on it. I'm the mom, whatever. But then the importance part of it, I think what you're saying is that now my role as mom looks like this. I take this on because now I'm an influence to these kids, and what I am, they're going to be, or what I, the old phrase, don't do what I do what I say, or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Don't, you, so the importance part of it is that you see that the weight, like you just said, of what you do, what you say, how you are a parent, or how you apply that matters, right? So I'm just saying is that because I feel like you could be a mom or dad. That's not even necessarily your identity unless you take it on, and then it becomes meaning. But then after meaning, if you take it on and take it to heart, it becomes an importance. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, you said something in there that was interesting, which was if you see the weight. And I think that, that what we deal with in a culture right now is that people don't see the significance of their actions or
Yeah,
their
right. That's what I was
their
trying to
life.
say.
So, what's informing your identity? So you talked about in identity, right? Excuse me. What's informing your identity is going to be either a secular or a selfish norm, or a norm from something else, an external thing. And Prager talks about in the article that most people got there. And this may be interesting because I got from the article that there's an empty, that Prager's arguing that there's an empty in the societal humans in America because we are lacking meaning. And I think he somewhat makes the argument that the feminist movement took, I guess the way I understood it was that we began to question and distort societal norms. Mm-hmm. And he goes back to Fathers Knows Best. And I remember the first thing that popped in my mind when I read that was, and yes, we had slaves not slaves, but that was before Martin Luther King Jr. And people were terribly treated in the black community back then. And so Fathers Knows Best. Yes, let's go back to that. Well, I don't think that's what he's referring to. But what was evident there was in whatever household that was there, and even in black households, there was a role that was clear between a mother and a father and children, and there was expectations, and the expectations was that the father had a role, the mother had a role, the children had a role. And I think Prager's argument begins to say that as we've moved forward and progressed in society, things have begun to break that down. Yeah, well, could women work in the 50s? Well, it wasn't something that was normal. Did we need to allow for women to have the freedom to work? Yes, but then it shifted from the freedom to do something to now you must do it. And it seems like what Prager seems to be arguing, or what I'm understanding, is that every time we not just allowed for a thing to happen, but we enforced it and said, now all women should be working. It's odd to be a woman at home in a role. Why would you do something like that? Fortunately, we're seeing a resurgence of that women want to come back to the household.
I don't feel like he's pushing that. I think he's just saying, I think the mentality of it, the understanding of it was skewed, and it's showing itself that it was skewed. But it shows it even if you just talk to to women who have maybe lived that, tried. He said, for many women, being the breadwinner is financially beneficial, but not especially satisfying. Most women would still like their man to be the primary breadwinner. That's why very wealthy women so often marry even wealthier men. It's built into the female nature to kind
Okay,
of
so
to look to a man. I mean, that's for us. We would look at Genesis and say that a woman was intended. In fact, God even had it as a part of the instruction to Eve, kind of like the you could call it part of the curse in a way, because he said to her. God said to Eve, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you will bring forth children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. It's just part of what the construct of the nature of people that God built into us. So we will desire our men. They'll rule over us. We'll probably always fight against that. So, but I think what he's saying is, if we could just see that that's not where we're going to get our meaning or our importance.
Well, and what I'm saying is, it seems to me that what I saw in the article was that he was breaking down the. He was saying that certain movements in our country, feminism being one, that when we started saying women should be allowed, now women do work, women ought to work, that began to tear the fabric of what was natural. Women more naturally preferred to be in the home. Or, and I realize that might offend some people out there, because not every, when you say something as a stereotype or as a rule, something that generally speaking, women prefer. Generally speaking, men prefer. That doesn't mean there are not exceptions.
Right. Well, that's what
I'm
feel
saying
like.
is when the exceptions begin to force upon the culture, to turn it as a rule. And so what I think Prager's argument in the overall point of the argument is, we've come to a point in a culture where we've allowed exceptions to rule, and to be the normative. So when as a result of that, we're confused about a lot of things, and we've lost a sense of importance. We don't know how to define what's important and what's not.
Right.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay. Well, I didn't think he pointed that out with men and women.
He didn't spend a lot of time on it, but that's kind of what I was reading.
Associations. He said that we have gotten away from understanding where our fulfillment lies, which he was attributing actually mostly to our associations, such as could be religious associations, and of course we know God and community, whatever, but also stuff just like our community clubs and different types of all the different leagues and charitable organizations, whatever, different types of, again, like I was saying, pouring something from you into something else. So I think what he was saying about men and women is that it did, like you said, it kind of got flipped, and we didn't learn our lesson, I guess, because now we're taking all those governments, also taking all the rest of that away, to some degree taking the place of, which means that we're going to lose more and more of our meaning, our sense of importance, because it's been taken out of the home, but it's also been taken now out of our culture, right? Is that so? Revamp what you just said. I agree with you that
I'm saying that we have a little bit at a time, and Grant, we can go way back beyond what did he say? The Father Knows Best narrative that he gives us in the illustration. We have made decisions that have eroded away at our acceptable norms as what's important and what's not. What makes us important. We, excuse me, for lack of a better framing, he says in simpler times the father worked and provided, and a mother was home raising the children, and father found his meaning in his work. But he also points out in the article, which I think is more accurate, that that's not really where parents found meaning, because you can take work away
that's what I was going to.
and find meaning elsewhere. But most of the time meaning was found in, and Prager uses examples of external things like Rotary clubs and religious. But I would argue that man doesn't find meaning in what he does, period. I think man finds meaning in who he is. There's a being aspect of things.
Definitely.
And your being, that's identity, is informed in a lot of ways. I think that primarily what we're taught when we look at the scripture and Jesus is asked what the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the idea in that is that if you take everything that you are in loving, pouring in loving your Father, it's through that connection to God that you will ultimately see who you are in light of Him, His mercy and grace. I was going to share. It was funny this morning. I was reading, and I had this pulled up a second ago. Let me grab it real fast. And I was reading in Deuteronomy 4, and just God's giving general instructions to Israel. But in the very end of that passage, He says, today recognize and keep, verse 39, recognize and keep in mind that the Lord is God in heaven above and on earth below. There is no other. Keep His statutes and commands, which I am giving you today. Now, pausing there, understand that that's not a long list. Jesus summarized the statutes and commands of God as loving God and loving neighbor, loving each other. He says, keep His statutes and commands, which I'm giving you today, so that you and your children after you may prosper, and so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you for all time. There's a simple yet clear admonition here that says, make your relationship with God, your loving Him, keeping His commands priority. And if you'll do that, then the land that you live in, your children, that heritage will be passed on, that there's a security. But I like that He says, today recognize and keep in mind that the Lord God is in heaven above and on earth below. He's not just out there. He's actually here. He's among us, and He desires to interact and to engage with us. And so the first place that we find our identity should be in our parents, right? Well, the first parent that matters is our heavenly parent, God. Mm-hmm. Then the next significant place where we find our identity is in our parents, which says something about where we come from and something about what we're passing on. And so for importance to happen, finding the proper place for meaning needs to happen. But our culture is telling us that we find our importance and our meaning and our importance are oftentimes muddled together. Or they're just roughly saying you're just important, and whatever you want to be or do, whatever your desires are. I want to use that word broadly, desires. Whether you desire to, I don't know, be whatever, do whatever. You're the boss of you. Yeah. And understanding that the very nature of this one is today understand that I am the Lord your God in heaven above and on earth. Yeah. That it's not up to me who I am. It's not up to me to define my being. And my being is a broad term that covers everything from my sexuality to my role in my family to how I function comes from how God defines me. It's not mine to define. Does that make sense?
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
And that sounds like it would be to some it may sound like it's. All right. Thank you so much for listening today to part 1 of How Do I Find Meaning. Next week we'll pick up this topic right here where we left off and see if we can't get a little more information. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.